dives into the Colonel, it's going to be my fault tonight. No, actually, the thing about the language of fans is that fans, you're quite right, did come over from China to Europe via Italy, as so much did after Marco Polo. But, in fact, it was quite a late 19th century invention. There was a French fan house, a maker of fans called Du Valois. And they produced a little booklet with this language of fans in order to try and make it sort of a...
French fan house? Is that a euphemism for something?
Maison de l'Éventail. I don't know, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't.
It took over from the language of the baguette, which was in use before.
Rather more basic language, exactly. Yeah, so there we are, fans. Obviously, every lady had a fan in those days, in the 18th and 19th centuries. But in order, I think, to help the sales of their fans, they invented this language, basically, the language of the fan. Now, what happened to the fireman's pole?
He tiled the fireman's bathroom.
Very good. Very good.
I mean, how much time does it save to go down a pole? I mean, they've got to drive half the mile across the town anyway to get there. So
that's
half
true.
A second off the... Just walk down the stairs.
Why don't they have a slide, like in the park?
Oh, that would be fun.
They could have a swirly slide or even a water slide.
It'd be a good way of getting young firemen in, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Getting them trained. It was probably a health and safety thing, I would imagine.
Oh, God.
Was it really?
No, you see...
Safety gone mad. That's the new political correctness gone mad.
Yeah, there was a series of stories in the newspapers that, like, essentially just to make things up. In order to get us all angry in the morning, they claimed that, you know, firemen's poles were being taken out because health and safety... And it's just...
It's the whole reason.
I mean, most new fire stations are built on one floor, so they don't arise. Yeah. But in all ones where they exist, they're there. And if they build one with 2 floors, they get their poles.
But surely that's the main reason you become a fireman, isn't it?
Yeah.
You go down the pole. It's not like I want to be a fireman so that I might die in a fire. It's I want to go down the pole and maybe one night I'll bring a special friend back and share with the pole and...
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
You demand an extra floor on the fire station. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. So
no, do you know where the longest pole is in Europe, fireman's pole? And how long would you think it might be? What's the maximum length?
48 feet, I would guess.
64
no,
feet.
No, 40 foot, actually. There's a 40-footer in Birmingham, and it's the biggest in Europe.
That's the limit, is it?
There may be a bigger one in America,
terrifying.
I believe.
That's really quite high.
It is quite high, 40 foot, yeah.
When you're really going to take the skin off your hands by the time you get off.
So you picture that squeaky noise, and it makes your teeth go on edge, doesn't
They
it?
talc up like the weightlifters.
They should do, shouldn't they?
Do they teach a technique of coming down the pole? Is it just hands? Because they
they're
all seem to be doing...
I think the thighs have
do a
to
knee
exert
grip.
pressure.
I must say, there are a hell of a lot of firefighters.
The driver of the fire engine is there going, no, I can't go yet, I've got to wait till they're all here. Meanwhile, a whole family is burning to death.
Well, apparently it's because they sometimes literally are still pulling on their trousers and then running downstairs doing that, of course, is much more dangerous than going down a pole where you can just sort of hold them up and go down the pole and put them on. Because you really are, and obviously every second can save a life.
I don't understand why the firemen are always completely caught out by the fact that...
Yeah, so what? A fire?
Oh, my God! Quick! All undressed.
Were the poles always made of shiny metal, or were there early versions that splintered and...
Nasty.
Well, they must have experimented with
flammable
materials.
pole, don't be absurd. They'll all be stuck up there with the pole on fire. No one to put it out.
it was insurance companies invented firemen.
You're absolutely right. I think you should get some points to that, Clive, because you're completely correct. Things like the Sun was one of the biggest, now the Royal Sun Alliance. That started as a fire insurance company. And what would happen was you'd pay the insurance to the company and they would send you a brass plaque which you would set into the wall of your house. So if there was a fire, what tended to happen was lots of different brigades came from different insurance companies and they read the plaque. And if you hadn't paid, they wouldn't put your fire out unless you happened to be next to someone else who had. Because, you know, if you got a fire, the chances are the fire would spread to them.
I think that's one of the worst things I can imagine is your house is on fire and they turn up and won't put it out.
I know. Can you imagine that?
That would make me annoyed.
Would they stay and kind of roast marshmallows, or would they just drive straight off?
They'd stand there with a hose going,
Or sort of saying...
They'd just stand there with water pouring out their...
Sort of saying, since we're here, if you paid for the next time, we might as well collect now.
Think again with your premiums.
It's not the fire that kills people. I don't know if you're aware of this.
Fire doesn't kill people?
No. Well, it does, Clive, of course. You're not going to tie me up in legalese here. I'm not going to get all heated up, which is what you want to happen. I'm not going to stay very calm.
Yes.
He didn't say fire doesn't kill people. He said it's not the fire that kills people.
Your
Not
Lordship,
quite the
your
same
Lordship is
thing.
absolutely right.
Thank you.
But I was just exploring a little bit the notion that fire was in some way not deadly.
It's not the fire
Yeah.
that kills the people.
Generally
it's
speaking.
a byproduct of the fire. And I wonder if any of you know what that byproduct is.
Might it be the smoke?
Is it flame?
Is it the slinky?
It's not the
No,
slinky, Stephen,
that
but
was
it's
a
a good
wild
try.
guess.
Yeah.
Clive, you were right. Smoke. It's the smoke. And what happens is, smoke doesn't burn you, so I know what you're thinking. Well, how on earth could... No. What smoke does, and this is where it gets interesting, it chokes you. And if we choke, what can't we do?
We
We
can't
can't breathe. We
No.
can't breathe. And if we can't breathe, what do, Dom?
We die.
We die. Yeah.
There's a thing called a flashpoint in which... Now, I don't know where I learnt this. Well, it might have been in a film, or it might have been from a really terrifying fire safety talk that we were given at primary school. which the one thing I really remember about that is when you strike a match, strike it away from you.
Yes.
Because otherwise the head will come off and set light to you, particularly if you're a granny.
Whoa!
And this guy told us a story about someone's grandma who'd burned to death.
Because urine is flammable if it stays on clothing. No, this is true. This is true. There's something in urine, if it stays on your clothes long enough, becomes flammable. So grandmothers who are not well maintained, it's true.
Particularly vulnerable to a flying
Particularly
head of a
vulnerable to an arsonist who's looking for...
That's a measure of how mean people are. They won't even pee on you if you're
That's an
on
Australian
fire.
phrase, isn't it?
Yes.
I wouldn't piss up his
something-
arse if his kidneys were on fire.
Exactly. So
Well, wonderful. Thank you for all that information about fire and smoke and goodness knows what else. Now, what's the worst thing you can do if you're a fire eater?
well, there are vegetarian restaurants, aren't there, where you can't get meat.
Yeah.
So if
All
you're a fire
vegetarian
eater...
restaurants, I think.
Yes.
Qualify.
Nothing wrong with that sentence so far.
There are vegetarian restaurants where you can't get meat.
Yeah.
To quote the great John Cleese, thank you for... What's your specialist subject? The bleeding obvious.
Okay.
I was
You've heard about these. Apparently, these vegetarian restaurants.
I was
where they
established
don't
what I thought
serve
was an
meat.
uncontroversial point that in vegetarian restaurants you can't eat meat because they don't serve it.
No, they don't.
You can't
I
eat meat.
believe that's
So there may be restaurants that don't serve fire. So if you were a fire eater, there'd be no point in going to these restaurants and ordering fire. This is a simple point I was trying to make, but I was interrupted rather on the way.
I'll have a nice plate of fire, please.
Yes.
And that wouldn't
I would have
work.
thought at a Christmas event, if a fire eater was thinking, I haven't shown my family this skill, and there was a urine-soaked granny who'd been brought out of the home just for a day for Christmas, that would probably not be the time to say, so what are you up to now? Bruno.
Well, basically, I mean, I don't know if you know much about fire eating. There isn't really much to know. What you see is what they do. It really is as bad as it looks. I mean, they mostly have mouths filled with blisters and ulcers. It's a very unpleasant thing to do.
Do you eat
and
the fire?
They hurt themselves. Basically, what you shouldn't do is breathe in. They have this condition, fire eater's lung, which is obviously, as you can imagine, an absolutely horrific condition. And
It's like
plus
farmer's lung and there's no subsidy.
Exactly.
Because basically it's fire spitting rather than fire
Yeah,
eating.
and that's, no matter how careful they are, they ingest the lighter fluid, which is toxic.
Or if you had plastic false teeth or wooden false teeth, which I think we've discussed in this program.
Yes, we
that
have.
would be a disaster because they would catch fire.
They would catch fire. That would be awful. Yeah, and the
smoking.
smoke would then...
Smoke.
Yeah.
Which would would kill you.
It wouldn't be the fire, you see.
Well, anyway, perhaps the most important piece of advice to the fire eater is do not inhale. Now, it's time to retire from the fire and brave the cold. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of a mile-long aircraft carrier made from ice and sawdust?
Radar. I put it to you that... Move on.
No, you got a good point there. That's a brilliant
Well, I
point.
was wondering, you see, I was wondering if they're undetectable by radar.
That must be.
It's a nice thought. I don't think that's true. At the size they were planned, and this was a genuine plan in Britain by a man called Pike, after whom the substance is named. It's a mix, I know. Yeah. Don't tell him your name, Pike. I know. His name is Pike with a Y. And the substance is known as pykrete. It's stronger than steel. I'm not kidding you. It's just
Till
ice.
the temperature goes up.
Well, no, but that's the other thing, is it doesn't melt. They tested it for a whole summer in a lake and it didn't melt. Mountbatten was obsessed by the idea and he took a lump of it in to see Churchill, and the story goes Churchill was in his bath. Churchill often took meetings while in his bath, and he threw it into his bath and said, "There, Winston." And Churchill watched in his hot bath and it didn't melt, this piece of ice. It did not melt, it stayed
But because it
frozen.
landed on his nuts,
Well,
he said, I'm not going ahead with that.
well, the idea was to build aircraft carriers, literally with guns on them. That was the plan. I mean, it seems absolutely barking, I agree. But it was only the Normandy landings that stopped us building such things.
The picture, of course, looks like the cover of a magazine where they might say, if you like ice and you like aircraft carriers, you love Iced Aircraft Carrier Monthly. It builds up into a wonderful collection.
Can I say, I do like ice and I like aircraft carriers, and I do get that magazine, and that's not an aircraft carrier, that's a destroyer.
You're right, that is a destroyer. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Very good.
Yes.
Absolutely right, actually. That's no kind of aircraft carrier,
There's
is
no
it?
magazine for those people.
And I'll tell you something else. It's not the aircraft carrier that will kill you. It's the destroyer.
Yeah.
Anyway, the 300-foot wide, 2,000-foot long mid-Atlantic runways would have contained giant refrigerators to keep the ice ship cool. Holes in a pykrete ship could be repaired by using seawater. And the icy aircraft carriers were also designed to be able to immobilise enemy warships by spraying them with supercooled water.
Yes.
Was it the idea of Professor Pat Pending from the Wacky Races?
Anyway, during World War II, plans really were drawn up for a huge aircraft carrier made from pykrete. Now, as we're in the Christmas spirit, let's have a little sing-song. What's everybody's favourite bit in that traditional song, the 12 Days of Christmas? Which is your favourite bit?
Lord's Leaping.
For me, it's the gold ring.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
knows that.
Yeah.
5 gold rings.
Wouldn't that be wrong if you were asked what his favourite...
He's leading the witness.
I asked what his...
Oh,
No, I asked what his favourite bit was in the traditional English song, and it's not traditional, it's a recent addition. There's a man called Austin who wrote that arrangement in which it went 5 gold rings, and that bit alone is copyright and belongs to Novello, and you pay for.
All right, so you've just blown the BBC's
you-
budget.
The whole BBC. It's a bit like Happy Birthday to
Yes.
You. You can't sing or whatever in films, or at least if you do, you have to pay enormous royalties because the lyrics are still not in public domain.
I was told at school that it was code. It was supposed to be an aide memoire to something. I don't know what.
Well, there are these games you can play that are like, in my trunk I'm going to pack, and the first person says a pair of swimming trunks, and the second one has a pair of swimming trunks and a book. So it's that thing, it's a memory thing. There's a version I play called Christopher Biggins Has Up His Bottom Tonight, and you have to remember the person. You go, Christopher Biggins has up his bottom tonight, and you go, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the next person says, Christopher Biggins has up his bottom tonight, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it has to begin with the last letter of Schwarzenegger. And...
Rodney Bewes.
Rodney Bewes, exactly. Christopher Biggins has up his bottom tonight, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Rodney Bewes, and then the next person will go, Christopher Biggins has his bottom
Steve
tonight.
Davis, the snooker player.
Brilliant!
Oh, you're finding another S.
And you go on
They're
until
all
you
up his
can't
bum.
remember, and you get a huge
Simon
list.
Sharma.
Thank you. And you usually find that Christopher
Andrews.
Christopher is astoundingly accommodating. That's the great thing about the game. And it goes on. It's a fun party game. I can't recommend it.
Is this
highly
why he
enough.
was made King of the Jungle? With this particular skill?
Well, the fact is, the song 12 Days of Christmas is a traditional, non-copyright song, with the exception of 5 gold rings, which was added by Frederick Austin and is owned by Novello and Company Limited. And with that, we lash out of the frying pan of knowledge only to descend into the fearsome inferno of the fire and brimstone that we call general ignorance. Fingers on buzzers, please. What happens when you blow out the candles on your birthday cake?
You're fired.
It's the first time since it's been over.